everybody. Welcome to the Unconventional Therapist Guide to Nothing. I'm your host, Dave. I'm here with my co host, Greg. Today is a wonderful day. And you know why, Greg?
Wonderful day because the game three playoffs, Celtics.
Nope, just because it's a new day. And
Ah,
every day is a wonderful day.
every day's a gift. That's where
Every
you're
day
at.
is a gift.
Okay.
Every
And I
day is a
like
gift.
that. Like, we should kind of embrace that a little bit more.
Why
Uh,
not?
so back on track here at the podcast and thanking everyone for their patience.
I think that's a little bold of a statement to make. I wouldn't say back on track.
Back
We're here.
recording.
We are recording an episode today. That is good.
Oh yeah, dude. Listen, hey, we put this stuff down on paper and then we don't know. Okay, the magic is with the relationship, Dave, just like in all therapy settings. And to me, this is a really cool topic. I'm glad you picked it because I've always thought about authenticity as something, or authenticity, identity, super complicated. We're not going to get to the bottom of this right now, but we're going to talk about two kind of components that highlight a lot of things that we assume aren't true about ourselves. Like this idea that we are one thing or we are
Yeah,
always authentic or our authentic selves. And is that even such a thing, or is that a
right.
conscious choice that we're making? I find this stuff fascinating, and there's worlds and different theoretical approaches that kind of attack this in different ways. We're kind of coming from a more Jungian point of view today. Everyone's favorite. You know what I mean? It's very, what do they say, contemporary or topical. Not true. But Young will always be a king. Um,
Yeah. And I think at the end of this, I think one of our hopes also would be to dispel that idea that just because someone acts a certain way in one setting and different in a different setting, that they're a fake person. And I want to dispel that, but I also kind of want to highlight areas where that could actually be the case versus you all do it and we all do
oh yeah, you all do it. We all do it.
it.
We don't do it. No, so yeah, we all for sure do it, and I think when it gets uncomfortable is when it's almost like the Aristotelian moderation golden mean thing, where like everything should be balanced. When people are completely inauthentic and way outside the bounds, then I think it's a little more obvious. But to say that you're the same person in front of your mom that you are around your friends or at
Exactly.
work or in a funeral or like we put on masks, and it's an interesting discussion. So Dave,
And
I
I
know
do
you like,
hope everybody can embrace that
yeah.
and understand that there's actually value to that and it's not a terrible thing. We'll talk about some of the dangers of it, but
You know,
it's
Dave,
not going
just
to be that.
we what's something that I like to kind of talk about right off the bat. It's like I almost think about this. I like to think in metaphors in a lot of ways. And for me, and I'll share one at the end that I think is really useful, just so people will hang on. But it's almost like there's this because I've been watching Game of Thrones. I know you've never seen it, but there's like
Correct.
a no face man or something like that, no face God, something like that. But I like to think of us using our identity as in like what mask is appropriate for this situation. Who do I need to present as? And the authenticity involved in that is the person who's making that choice. That the
Yeah.
entity that's making that choice is you. So making the right choice for the right situation, showing up in the way you need to, showing away in an appropriate way, is all very personal and it's all very selective and it's all very choice oriented, which makes it authentic, even though it might like look different in different settings.
And it is different than falling into a role in some ways, because falling into a role sometimes can be a subconscious thing that we don't even, it's more based on personality traits of who we are, that we react certain ways or perform in certain ways at different times versus what we're going to talk about today, which is more like Greg said, it's a little bit of a choice oriented personality that we are showing to people versus things about ourselves that cause us to react in a certain way, like that person who just like falls into the role of helping everybody else or like being the strong one in a certain situation. When I say strong, I mean like emotionally strong to help benefit everybody else. That might just be part of who they are versus like a very like distinct choice they're making, right?
And I also think that an important piece of this too is people are putting on a mask to what end? I mean, is it values based? Is it like towards something that's important, or is it to manipulate or, trick somebody or get something that you want or to make things easier or more pleasurable? Like, so it really is about um a value or an intention too, isn't it?
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Intention is probably an important word here. Because yeah, it's all intention. So the persona, we'll start with that one.
Okay.
The persona describes the personality that we decide we're going to exhibit to the world, um, or to certain spaces that we exist in our lives, right? So it's going to show the parts of ourselves that we want people to see, while the shadow is exact opposite. It's actually the parts that we want to hide from the world or from certain spaces. So the persona is like a set of personality traits or qualities that we mesh together to show the outside world whatever our desired effect is from those qualities or traits. So it could be this idea that like I'm a very extroverted social person, right? If I think that's what's needed for that situation, I might try to put those personality traits all together, despite the part of me inside that's like crawling out of my skin because I'm actually quite the opposite of that. I guess that would be sort of an example.
Yeah, and I like how you said desired effect there because I've recently heard someone say that like all human behavior is either choices or behaviors towards a desired outcome or away from an undesired outcome. And that's essentially,
Yes,
you know what I mean?
absolutely. So it's so funny. Well, not funny, but it's like kind of goes along with what you're saying. So I've talked about this before, but one of the things that I do is I write behavior plans for individuals who maybe live with their families or in some kind of caretaking situation. And in the beginning of the behavior plan, I have to write the function of the behavior.
Mm,
And the function of their behavior, the negative behavior that I'm writing the behavior plan for, is exactly what you're saying. It's like for an outcome. It's a desired effect, whether it's to escape a situation or a task, to express themselves or communicate some kind of need or distress. Whatever it is, it's a desired effect, whether it's good or bad. So positive behaviors are for a desired effect too, like your teacher to give you praise or to think of you as a good student, or friends to like you, or things like that.
yeah, and it's like as you're, dude, this is actually a really good topic. And the way you shift your persona and what you show to people can either get you closer or further away from where you want to be, even in
100%.
relationships, right? Like there's things that I do. I say I want to be closer to Natasha. Um, I will sometimes allow, parts of me to show up out of, hurt or I don't know, jealousy or whatever. And I wear a persona that gets me further away from my desired outcome. And I
Ooh,
have to be careful.
actually, let's table that, because I
Sure.
want that's actually part of why I wanted to do this,
Okay.
because I want to go into depth on that a little bit more. So just let's table that till after we talk about what persona and shadow is, and then let's get to that, because that's a
Okay.
big part of this, is
Yeah.
how we let people in. So all right, so just kind of going into like these the personas. This is So the first component of a persona is like what we show in the exterior, right?
Yes.
So it's the way that we're utilizing the persona is to mask, right? We're masking um certain qualities of ourselves to fit in socially. So we create them to fit like the standards that we deem of like culture or the society, rather than from our own ideal self-image. So one persona that is probably a most common one that people don't even think twice about is when you leave the house and you run into somebody, chances are you are probably putting on the persona of being nice, polite,
Yeah.
personable, looking positive, even if that's not necessarily how you're feeling. So it's all about social norms too. So if somebody walks by you and they say hi, you might respond, hi, how are you? And then they might respond with something. And then that kind of like turns into what we call like small talk,
Mhm.
or like have a nice day, or you use, saying thank you, things like that. Like those are all things that's all persona that we're putting on for the world, which are also kind of like is intertwined also with like social normalties. Because if that wasn't our social norm, which we can kind of in the Northeast get away with not doing that stuff
Yeah.
because our social norm is a little different than other regions of the US, for example. So if you're down south and you don't say, you know, good morning or hi, if you're on a walk or something, you're a rude person. If you're up here, you're probably just blending in with everybody else. But
Yeah.
there are certain situations where we do have to do those social norms, right? And that's putting on a mask to engage in those.
Yeah, like I mean, how many times have you been having a rough day and someone comes up to you and you're like, "Hey, how's it going?" You're like, "Pretty good, pretty good."
Pretty good, yes, and I'm having a crap
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
And
pretty good.
sometimes I think sometimes too some people will catch themselves and be like, I don't know why I just said that, I'm actually having a terrible day, and then that will lead to something else, and that's them choosing, I'm not going to just put on that mask, I'm actually going to share a little bit more of myself for whatever reason, again about desired effect, because I guarantee you if they're deciding I'm going to actually be a little bit more honest, they are probably looking for something from that other person.
Yeah, I think we're gonna like lean into this desired effect versus undesired outcome a lot.
I
I
I
mean,
think so.
therapy going forward.
Yeah. The risk of not doing the social norm, like I said, is like not fitting in or being not being accepted socially or being rejected or people saying negative comments or statements to us, and then us feeling negative because we didn't get the desired effect, which would be to fit in. So places you might put on an external persona, I think the most obvious for any adult in the work field would be the workplace, right? So you put on a certain persona that fits into the workplace culture or position that you're in, because like it could affects change based on positioning. So if I'm an entry level person, my persona might look different than I am if I'm a supervisor or if I'm a general manager or whatever, though my persona is going to look different based on how I see someone in that position holding how they're supposed to hold themselves up.
Right, and people might even actually, as you shift positions, you might even have to accept that, like, okay, so like I have to be different now. I can't behave in the same ways that I was.
Right. And it's for some people, that's a trial and error thing because they might not necessarily know. Yeah. How many times, I don't know if you've ever worked in a place where someone elevated positions and now they're like, oh crap, all the people that were my friends, I'm now the supervisor of, and I have to figure out how to hold myself. And it's also then a struggle for the people that were your friends to interact with you in this new persona that you're putting on.
They
How many times do you hear that?
they've changed. When in
They've
reality,
changed.
they've just put one mask on the shelf and popped another one on. That's
Exactly.
already part of them.
It's
So,
so funny. Imagine if people started to say like, "Oh, I can't stand that persona they're putting on."
you know, it's funny. We kind of do. So and I accidentally, you're making me think of something that happened recently at work. And there's, at the partial program, there was this, we've got all kinds of populations. And this person was, they came in and typically just in like pajamas and stuff like that, but they came in and they had painted their face completely white and were wearing like a dark cape and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, trying something on. Right. And I didn't mean anything profound by it, but as we talk about this, I'm like, we do have to try on personalities. We do have to test personalities and different parts of ourselves and see, which ones kind of move towards these desired outcomes that we're talking about. And the desired outcomes is a piece of your personality and a piece of your identity too.
It's still you,
Yeah,
which
all
people
you.
struggle to understand when you're suddenly putting on a different persona in front of people who maybe know a different side of you or seen different personas of you. They then start to utilize statements like that person's being fake,
Mhm.
they're phony, they're disingenuous, they're not
You've changed,
authentic.
man. You've
You've
changed.
changed. But they are not, it's not those things. It is that they have put on a new persona and they are showing different sides of who they already are
Right.
for the most part, because then I'm going to get into what internally generated personas could be. And that might actually challenge this thought slightly.
Okay.
But just to finish the places your external persona might show up more. So I said workplace, but also maybe let's say like social gatherings with strangers or with friends, right? So I'm not going to be the same person with like one group of friends than I am with a different group of friends if the dynamics in those groups are different, or if I'm going into a place that's I'm completely unknown to me with people that don't really know me. I'm going to choose to show certain sides of myself because I want to fit in. I want them to see positive sides. I'm not going to go in and intentionally choose to be annoying, to be a Debbie Downer, like, and just talk about negative aspects, put myself down, even if that's what I'm internally thinking. Those aren't things I'm going to choose to show people right off the bat.
Well, think about this. Like, say you're with a group of friends, and one of their like cousins or aunts or great aunts passes away, and you're not close to them, and you don't really have a huge this person that passed. And you're at the services with this group of friends. You're different in this very instant than you are going to be later on that day at a
100%.
like a party or whatever with them.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
people put so much pressure on their identity, and it's like, look, your identity is kind of chosen in the moment, and if you don't like where it's getting you, and you don't kind of sort of you don't have a lot of self-esteem about where you're at right now, so you're not comfortable with how you've been behaving, change.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, your persona can even be different. You can, for some people, they might even put on a different persona when they're with family. I mean, even the closest of family, they might allow themselves to show certain parts that maybe they withhold in other situations, but they still might hold back other parts. Like I might share some things with my family that I wouldn't share with other people outside of my family, but I'm probably not doing keg stands at my family's house, right? And like going woo and like stuff like that, which inside of me is also a part of who I am because I do enjoy to have a great time at certain
occasional text,
situations.
which who doesn't, and an
Right.
occasional woo, like Ric Flair.
Exactly. All right. So that's the external persona. Now the internally generated persona. This is a little different. And this was actually like a newer concept to me because I hadn't really thought of the personas in this context, but it makes sense. So these are more generated to create or help boost our self-image, um, kind of looking at traits that we fear we lack and almost like overcompensating, trying to help ourselves feel like we are able to show those to mask some of our insecurities that we have around them. So we might exaggerate these personas to hide the exact opposite of like the thing that we fear we don't have, which would be the shadow.
Mm.
And a lot of this happens unconsciously and automatically, and we're not even really even aware that we do it. So, exhibiting like overconfidence or excessive self assurance to overshadow the things that we're insecure about, can definitely happen. So people who act very confident in themselves or confident in a certain trait, but also then you end up finding out that like, oh, that person's actually super insecure about that. That's kind
Totally.
of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, even like think about bullies, and I remember even like bullying in the 90s was a lot of that. It was a lot of like homosexuality wasn't looked upon too highly. And I mean, I've often thought of my like how many of these people who are so hard on people who like maybe had like sort of some I don't know who were had the courage to kind of come out as homosexual at that in that sort of period, and they picked on them probably because there was something they were hiding too, and they were jealous
What I
of their
always think about that, how often
jealous
you
of their
would,
bravery. Yeah,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, maybe it was jealous of the bravery, their ability to kind of just be themselves and like show a side of themselves that felt very vulnerable, or unsafe at the time to show, or if that person that was bullying also had their own sexual insecurity, and because if they didn't, you would wonder why it even mattered to them.
Yeah, or like nerd, like when you're calling someone a nerd because you're
Yeah,
like a
but
dope idiot.
I mean that's the most obvious one to me
Yeah,
is when you would see. I mean, it's like what's his name on The Simpsons? Is it the bully
yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Melvin? Is that his name? I can't think of it. But yeah, but he's like, but then
Yeah,
he's actually not bright himself, and he's always
yeah.
bullying the nerds. So yeah, I mean that's so that I mean you can kind of understand how that happens. You can also understand as it gets discovered by others how it seems disingenuous, right? Because you're ultimately building relationships on things that maybe aren't truly authentic.
And there's the intention that we're talking about here.
Right.
Like
If
if
it's
it's
subconscious, obviously it's less. choice related
Right, right. But
versus
yeah, exactly. So like but a bullying thing would be a good example of like a shadow sort of trait, right? Um, but it's interesting though. Like, are you ready for me to kind of get into the shadow a
yeah,
little?
yeah, let's
All
do
right.
it.
So the shadow is something that we kind of talked about. I think like I almost said famously in a Christmas episode when we talked about maybe Santa Claus being, our best persona and Krampus being the shadow of us,
Yeah,
the darker side, the you know the persona in a lot of ways, Dave, you've described it beautifully, is there to conceal the shadow, right? And, like that's a lot of its use. And the shadow is this unconscious, at times hidden, repressed aspect of the personality that our ego doesn't identify with. Dark and negative traits, like so anger and selfishness and things that in a lot of ways that should be repressed or limited. But the idea though is though if we're trying so hard to repress something and we're trying so hard to keep something tucked away and we're not paying attention to it and we're not keeping our eye on it, it becomes more dangerous and is able to like be released unconsciously. Almost like I've used the metaphor at times of having a bee in the car, where if you can keep your eye on it, you can kind of keep it like the anger and the selfishness and the fear, big one, under control. But if you're not watching it and you're not aware of it, like you really can't be good without some capacity for negativity or darkness inside of you. It's like we are like Jung himself has that quote where it's like, um, it's impossible for a tree to reach to heaven if its roots don't go down to hell. I mean, it's like,
mm,
well, that's a very interesting sort of idea there, saying
sure,
that the shadow is as important piece of our um, identity as, the persona itself, right? So it's
right.
the shadow is what we don't choose to show, and the persona is what we do choose to show. And it's like a balance of that is important because at times the dark side is important. And so some key aspects of the shadow here, it is sort of referred to as the dark side. Representing repressed, unlived, or undesirable traits. Maybe traits that have gotten you into some trouble early on in your life where like there may have been pieces of you. Maybe you were bullied, and maybe those pieces of you that you used to allow out, you've now repressed because they got you undesirable effects or outcomes, right?
Right.
Um, Jung would have referred to the shadow as like an unconscious snag. It's like limiting beliefs. My cousin Chris, I was just at a cookout. I'm calling him out last night. My nephew Mark's birthday, and my cousin Chris is a firefighter, and he got really hurt, and they're retiring him, which is a really complicated thing because he's devoted 15 of years of
Yeah.
his life to this, and now they're like, get out of here, right? And he's like, what? Because he got hurt on the job, like doing good work.
Right. Right.
So I like weirdly thought about this idea yesterday, like the shadow, where he was having so much stuff where it's like, I can't do this because of this. I can't do this because of this. I can't do this. He's told himself a lot of dark stories that aren't necessarily true. And that could be part of like the unconscious snag that Freud is talking about. I mean, Jung is talking about Freudian slip.
So why do we do it?
And Dave, I'm so
Like
glad you weirdly
what's
asked that
yeah,
question.
what is he protecting himself from in that scenario?
I'm going to tell you in two words. And I've been noticing so much of this with people lately. We will avoid a path. And Dave, we've talked about this recently,
Yeah.
that it's better for us to avoid temporary discomfort.
Right.
So we will avoid temporary discomfort and just be in relative discomfort for the rest of our lives.
100%.
And it's just such a strange thing because it's like, yes, this might be a hard thing to start somewhere new, and it might be difficult to kind of the rehab process that he has to do in his shoulder. He's like, I can never be in shape again. It's like, well, that's kind of never's kind of a huge word. I mean, if you've got a shoulder issue, I think you have legs. We got that going, right? So there's
Yeah.
like, there's lots of things that we can kind of
Oh,
talk.
if I remember correctly, he's got some pretty muscular legs too.
Beautiful legs.
That's scary.
All right. Yeah. So, and another part of this, Dave, like if you've ever read, or if you don't want to read it and you just want to listen to an episode that we did an episode on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And Mr. Hyde is a beautiful literary representation of the hidden destructive tendencies that the
Sure.
shadow can be, right?
Yeah.
Like parts. So Mr. Hyde was certainly part of Dr. Jekyll.
Right.
They were one, right? They should have a name for both of them. But like the man or whatever. This is just pieces of him, and he lets the sort of shadow start to run who he was. And
Right.
I'm sure we talked a lot about the shadow in that episode too.
So, I mean, just to also kind of even break it down, even to a more simpler response, as far as why we do this sometimes. And you said it's to avoid discomfort.
Mhm.
And ultimately, I think even beyond that, one step further, it's fear. What if I fail? What, or it could be fear of the discomfort, fear of like, I don't want to feel that way. I don't know if I'll be able to handle it. But I think ultimately, even a step further, is it is fear of failure.
It, yeah, and in every sense of the word, like however, whatever that means to you. And I think the fact that it's repressed and the fact that it's tucked away and the fact that it's affecting us in ways without us really being conscious of it all the time makes it really different. Makes it really difficult to kind of address. And to address it, I mean, there's ways, there's like dream work and there's, I mean, therapy, of course, and analyzing your behaviors. Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Um, but it's important to look at a shadow because a shadow is pieces of us which we want to sort of dispel. And the way to dispel a shadow is by shining a light on it. In other words, taking a look at it and
Yeah.
seeing like what's there. Um, just like the persona thing, there's a collective shadow, which is just parts of the society and culture that we've all kind of try to hide. Almost like obviously, you know, America, you can sort of name quite a few. I think probably historically racism is a part of the shadow of the culture. I mean, it's there, it's part of it. Um, the nature of having, we're a collective culture country, which is a beautiful thing, but it's also going to have a dark side to it too, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, this is let's try to
Oh,
get some examples and some
but
ways.
yeah, can I just really
Yeah,
quick? This is
yeah,
a quick tangent. What you just talked about with like our history and how dark it can be.
yeah.
There is always this argument of, why we include or have like things that remind us of some of those dark figures or some of those dark histories. I think there's a difference between maintaining history for that reason we all know, so history doesn't repeat itself, and because it's part of our history and we should be aware of it, versus celebrating the dark
Yeah,
past or the dark aspects of it. And I
but,
think that's why those conversations between, like, all right, so for example, like statues and monuments, I
yeah,
think the reason why that is such a tough conversation is people that are having those debates, if they're on, if they could even be having like the same train of thought, be on the same wavelength and agree on like the end of that debate would be like, oh yes, we recognize that that was not a good situation. But I think the debate is like, putting this out here might cause people to think it's being celebrated or it's being honored, and the other people might be on the other side saying like, we have to acknowledge that this is part of our past. We can't just erase it. So having this here is like a reminder of the past. We're not celebrating this person or this figure, but we are reminded of a situation that we should not be just kind of overlooking.
which arguably is what we're trying to do in a lot of ways. So it's like, so, and then a different argument would be like,
I don't think either side's wrong though. Like
right.
I think they're both kind of like, in the end, I think they can agree somewhere, but that's like just kind of thinking of where they're formulating those opinions. I can
Yeah,
understand
and
both
like how
sides.
you're conceptualizing like shadow in a culture is like you
Yeah.
have a good point. And even like the stuff when we talk about certain things we don't teach in school, that's essentially shadow work too, right? Because they're we're not teaching them in school, but they're certainly affecting the way people are treated and you know what I mean?
Yeah. So
It's
I
not this
think
isn't like sort of
the the responsible thing is to really consider, how does teaching this benefit versus withholding benefit. And that's what we're all deciding to do when we're determining our shadow and what parts of it we want to show in certain situations versus others.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, it's actually a way, one of the ways the shadows manifest in ways that we might not be fully conscious of or aware of is like what we're talking about with bullies, where you like this irrational, intense dislike for someone because they're sort of like you, right? In some ways. Or they're showing um parts of you that you're not showing, and
Right.
you dislike them because, subconsciously you're hiding that same exact thing. Like this person and you have a lot in common, but irrationally they're really over the top upsetting you because it's just like I don't love the word, but it's a triggering moment, right? So excessive anger, jealousy, or resentment, Young would call this like a shadow attack.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right.
Yeah.
So another sort of thing that could happen, I see Jung and Freud are like contemporaries, and this is sort of Freudian in a way, but if you're not really working on um, paying attention to the darker parts of you and like repressing them and pushing them away, which we all have a habit of doing because they scare us, right? Like
Sure.
there's parts of us that we like thoughts that we have. With people all the time, people have these thoughts and they're like, "Oh my God, I don't want to think that way," and they try to push it away. And by trying to push it away, you're signaling to your brain that that's like important, or there's something about that that's dangerous. So of course your brain's gonna want you like, no, 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 look, look, look. So it's kind of maladaptive. But you could have these sudden outbursts. Like you're typically your persona has been this quiet, reserved, individual. Then all of a sudden you just have a nutty and you've got this intense anger and people don't even understand it at all. And now people are like, wow, that's inauthentic. And it is inauthentic because you've only been attending to personality pieces of your personality that you are like feel
Yeah.
okay with, you know?
That's, I'm glad you just gave that example because actually, then, that's something else to highlight here. When people label someone as being inauthentic,
Mm.
if you get called that, you have to take it with the grain of salt because people only know what they know. So if you only show one side of you and then suddenly you show another side and they're giving you that feedback, it's because you never showed that to them before. So they're believing what they see. Which is dangerous to do. Don't only believe what you see. Try to get more context and understand a person before you label. We shouldn't just label off of situations. We should try to get context because you never know what someone's going through is, the common thing that we can all say to each other. But yeah, I think that's an interesting part of this too, is people only know what they know.
And the thing about inauthenticity is, I think, because we talked about intention in the beginning, I think inauthenticity is when someone is intentionally deceptive towards
Right.
someone else for, you know,
About themselves,
about them.
about what they're showing people, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
Intentionally deceptive, so that they can gain.
Which is also kind of contradictory for
I
us to
know.
say because we also tell people fake it till you make it.
Well, to like, and I think like to further that definition, you have to say, um,
From malicious intent
intentionally deceptive, incongruent with your values action.
in with your values. Perfect. Thank you. That is better clarification because oftentimes like we can get hung up because we might give contradictory information. Like I just said, like the phrase "fake it till you make it" is literally showing someone a side of you that might not exist, and you're
Yeah.
hoping that you can kind of work into that persona, right?
Yeah.
Fake it till you make it is about putting on a persona,
Putting on a persona towards the thing that you value and want to be,
right?
and you're not quite there yet, is very authentic, right? But
Like we
putting on a
literally had to do that in order to work in our field because there was a period of time we had a lot of fears, doubts, insecurities. But if we showed those, nobody would want to sit across from us and take anything we were saying for as valuable information or help because they would be like, these guys are nervous wrecks. They're not secure in themselves. And that makes me feel like they don't know what they're talking about.
if Dave, if you were a patient of mine and I was convincing you um that you needed more therapy because I genuinely believe you need more therapy, and I'm gonna I think I can help you and we're gonna work towards that together. That is authenticity. But if I'm, you know, I need to keep patience, and you're a really easy insurance or something like that.
Yeah.
And I convince you need more therapy so that I can kind of fill my pockets a little bit more.
If
That
you know you can't help me and you keep telling me you want to help me because of paycheck, because of I need patience to fill my schedule, then yes, that is disingenuine for malicious intent in my opinion. Well, malicious being a very strong word to use, but it's like you said, that goes against a lot of ethics. I mean, hopefully that goes against your ethics
oh
and values, right? That's the hope.
all right. So Dave, detecting the persona in the
Yeah, well, I mean, it's I guess for people like this conversation just expands on that, right? It's like so if you are presenting a certain way, I think it goes down to that idea of what we said before, like asking yourself, what is my intention by showing these things? Sometimes it's less obvious. Sometimes it's not a conscious choice. It feels more subconscious, but most likely we are presenting a certain way for a certain reason. And I think it's important that you question, like, why am I withholding the things I'm withholding? Now, the reason I say that is you might sometimes say, well, there's a very obvious reason. I'm not comfortable sharing this with these people for whatever reason. I don't think it's necessarily information that's going to benefit these relationships, benefit my space here. It's not going to help me advance in any way if I'm at work. It's not going to help me feel closer to these people if it's just a group of friends. Whatever the reason is, if you have your genuine reason for withholding it, then then there's probably a reason you are, and that persona is fitting. If you are holding it specifically or only because you feel, I don't know, what would be valuable reasons to withhold something, like not valuable reasons to withhold something? Because you're afraid they're going to judge you and leave you always. If that's always the same reason every single relationship you're in,
yeah.
they're going to reject you. They're not going to accept you. If you do that in
Your
every
own
relationship,
comfort versus
yeah,
you know what I mean? The
the dynamics of the
what feels
relationship.
good versus what is good.
Right.
And I think when we say what is good, people will be like, "Well, that's different to everyone." But I think kind of what is good and like
Okay. Yeah. And then that leads back to the conversation we were having at the start when you were talking about why you might share something with Tosh. There's a reason you do that. And
mhm.
it's called vulnerability. It's called allowing you to feel closer or that other person to feel closer to you. If you constantly find yourself hitting walls in relationships, your relationships never get deep. It is probably because you're not showing your shadow in any relationship you're in.
We're avoiding temporary discomfort.
Yes,
I
because
mean,
your fear of being
fear based. Yeah.
left. It's. I mean, yeah. It's all comes down to that, and that's why. Like, so, Greg.
Like why people don't stop drinking. Like, right? Because they're avoiding temporary discomfort for a greater, like they're avoiding the difficulty for the comfort. And
You know,
it's like,
I now that you say that, like, I think when we think of persona, drinking is a great example of a way people put on a persona. Because for some people, they've and myself included, actually, especially when I was younger, I think I've kind of gotten through past some of that now. But that idea of like when I drink, I act a certain way that makes me way more fun to be around, way more accepted, way more
yeah.
social.
And
So
here's
I
the
have
fucked
to
up
do
thing.
that.
Like Dave, like that beautiful example that you're giving right now, and people think like the shadow is just like, oh, my dark side, my this, my that. Sometimes the shadow is that fun side of you. Like sometimes you've
Yeah.
hidden that, like that, like outgoing side of you, because you've released that side of you before, and it's been smashed. You know what I mean? Like it's a
Yeah.
part of you that and I love this term, almost to put it in like sort of your disowned. How's that? Like it's a piece of you that you've disowned
Sure.
for your own comfort, for your own safety, for fear of something.
And I don't think your shadow only has to be these little private
Yeah.
things that are like really like you're really afraid. Sometimes your shadow can just be like, I actually am kind of insecure that I'm like kind of boring.
Mm.
Um, I'm insecure that people don't find me funny. So I put on this persona and I over exaggerate aspects of like humor to try to be funny because I don't think I'm funny. Things like those could be perfect examples of things you withhold from others that your persona kind of masks.
And when you drink, you lower your inhibitions, and pieces of your shadow are allowed to escape without you putting the blocks up. as
So you don't even realize that part of your
they're
shadow
slipping
is
through,
being,
slipping
yeah,
through. They,
right.
it's
And it
yeah,
gets messy though, because it's like persona shadow mixed and it doesn't always look great. And your ability to make good choices is very much compromised. So not to make this about, just about drinking, but I think that's a great way of looking at another way that sometimes a persona can be demonstrated in a way that's very much like you choose to engage in that behavior so that it can show a certain side of you. Uh,
absolutely.
so with relationships, back to that, like we've shared a number of times this idea of like Greg and I both have engaged in interpersonal therapy group. And a big part of that group is getting people to show their shadow versus only their personas. And that takes time. So we've had like my group that I have has 5 members at 1.6. So it's 5 now. And getting them to a place where they were all comfortable enough to show another side of themselves that they withheld and have deep conversations. It's so crazy to see now how able they are to versus when we first started. And there would always be like these uncomfortable silences, this moment where they'd kind of look at me like, are you going to say something? And I'm just looking back at them. Are you guys going to say something? Uh, there was so much discomfort. And now that we're at a place where everybody's kind of showing parts of their shadow, I actually feel like I'm the one not but it's not really my role. It's not supposed to be about me. But as facilitator, I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, they're all so vulnerable with themselves. Every now and then I show a little bit of my shadow, but I try not to do it too much as the group facilitator because it's just would make it about me and I don't want that.
I think like remember the real world at the beginning. This is gonna maybe like cut off a lot of our younger.
Oh yeah, I mean that was ages ago
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, but like, and they said, well, like
When
when
people
things
start
start,
being polite and
yeah,
start
start
getting
getting
real.
real, right? So it's like, I think that's like a beautiful sort of description here. And the way, if you want to think about it a little bit, it's like shadow, yes, that's the very real, raw, your raw material, in a
Sure.
lot of ways, right?
So for younger listeners, there used to be a show at MTV when MTV actually was a station, and when MTV actually showed things like reality TV shows along with music videos once in a while, and Beavis and Butthead and Daria.
Right.
They had The Real World for numerous seasons. I think they made it to like 40 or 50 seasons. And yes, in the intro, it would be this voiceover of the cast of characters saying like when to show what it's like when people stop being polite and start getting real. And that you're exactly right. That's exactly what it's about.
Like we could have just said that in the beginning. And then like what's funny is I think about it like this. Your the shadow and for better or for worse, right? It's not just your bad pieces, it's your pieces, right? In a lot of ways that you've sort of through your life um have tried on through your persona, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've tried on pieces of your shadow through your persona, and some of them were rejected, and so you put them away into storage. They're always going to be a piece of you, and they're always there, driving your behavior in some minor ways. But just because that behavior wasn't useful at a time in your life doesn't mean that like you can't open that chest and use it later on. Like it's like when people were some people develop ADHD for reasons where like they were always told to when things got stressful in the house, like to just be quiet, just be quiet. And
Sure.
when you're a kid, you shut down. So when things get stressful in school, you've developed this tendency to shut down when things get hard. And so they think that you're not focused and you're not able to pay attention and all these things because that's what worked for you. And you've put that ability away in a closet. So now we've got to take it out and try it back on and see like, does this because it's almost like people wearing baggy jeans again. Like these didn't work. Like if you would have put that on, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, people would have been like, oh no, we're doing the skinnies, we're doing the
Oh
slim.
yeah.
And
I
now
I was
that
literally just throwing away a pair of skinny jeans the other day. I was like, I'm
I
never gonna
know,
need these again.
never gonna need them
10 years
again.
later, I'll be like, I wish I didn't throw those away.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's like where are all my Jenkos? Just kidding, I never had any. But I
Never.
I I did love a baggy jean though. Oh my
Yeah, hell
God,
yeah.
I'm glad that's back.
You brought up a good point of like how some of this manifests or how it is created in us, like why some people so strongly hold on to their aspects of their shadow to the point where it actually prevents them from getting into deeper relationships. Yeah, no, at some point, yeah, either they had an experience where someone shut them down, or maybe it was like part of their upbringing where you just didn't talk about vulnerable things with like a caretaker or anyone that's was like, considered to be a trusted person in your life,
Yep.
or you did and it was met with like shame, guilt, regret of saying it after maybe it made the person angry. So you think it's wrong. But if if you don't allow vulnerability in your relationships, you don't allow people to get closer to you. You might feel very comfortable getting closer to other people. They share things with you. You're able to hear them. You're able to be there for them. And that's what people don't sometimes understand. It's reciprocal, though. You can't only be there for other people. You have to allow people to be there for you in order for them to also feel close to you. Otherwise, they're not getting deep with you and they don't see you fully. And people do pick up on this. This is why some relationships don't work, or some people walk around and they just can't feel like a no relationship ever fully works for them. They don't
Absolutely.
allow the relationships to get deeper because they so strongly hold on to that shadow. I often ask people, what part of your shadow is it that's so hard for you to show in relationships? And most people have something.
Absolutely. And it's like and it can get really dark too. Have you ever heard of these incels?
I
Incels?
don't really know what it is, Greg, but I hear about it, and
It's like
I feel very
so
old
look, I don't
saying
know
it.
exactly what it is either, but I gather that it's like these guys who have attempted relations with women like a lot and are like virgins and have never and now they're like
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
hate women. I want to be a
Oh
virgin.
okay,
I'd
yep,
rather be a virgin. I hate women. And it's like
yeah,
I don't know about that. You know what I mean? And it's like it's they're the hiding it's like they've developed this hate for women based on a
yes,
fear or based on an insecurity and it's like kind of a when it gets too bad kind of example, when it gets really
sure.
dangerous and scary.
Can I share a population of people who struggle with this a little bit more than others?
Absolutely.
And so, all
I think
right,
it's where you go.
from a lot of the work that I do with individuals who are on the autism spectrum,
Hmm.
the idea of shadow and persona is a little bit more challenging at times because a lot of individuals, not all of them, may be more on the side of like black and white thinking, rigid thinking, and it might not make sense necessarily that I'm going to hide a part of myself, or they feel like because of what they've experienced, there's a lot of stuff that they just don't bother sharing with people. Therefore, they have either have a harder time being vulnerable, or kind of the opposite. Nothing's really vulnerable because they are just so authentic to who they are in some ways, but in almost like too much. Like they don't know when to reserve certain information or what might be something. Like a lot of it has to be taught, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it can really hinder relationships for people on the spectrum, make it hard for them because they just put it all out there. What they're a lot of times like what they're thinking might just be said. There's like filtering can be really challenging. But on the other end, when we watch it, like for example, I think it's the reason why people love watching that show, Love on the Spectrum on Netflix, because it's also sort of refreshing seeing
Totally.
people just be totally honest and like, all right, the end of a date happens and they're not feeling each other and they're just like, hey, you know what? This doesn't really feel right. Have a nice life. And then they shake hands and leave. It's like it's funny because it's so out of the what like outside of that population, it's not like we're always so daunted by social norms and fears and like um hiding aspects of who we are and not saying things because we're fear of like how it's going to be taken. And sometimes with individuals on the spectrum, like I said, not all of them, that trying not to overgeneralize, but those are thoughts that might not be so considered. Like they're not like if I say this, they might take it the wrong way. They're like, I should say this because they should know this. It makes sense for them
Yeah,
to
it's
know
like one of those
this.
things where it's like there's some things you got to keep to yourself, and that's somehow fits in the world of authenticity while it's the most inauthentic statement ever.
Exactly. And I have this other individual that I work with, and it's such a challenge for them when someone asks them, how are you doing? Or how have things been? They hate it. They actually won't ask other people. And sometimes their greetings come off really weird or uncomfortable because like they don't like that question because they feel like they have to give an honest answer. And I said, and I actually had to teach them responses to give. And I'm talking about like an 18, 19-year-old. I
Yeah.
actually had to teach them like you don't have to tell them exactly how you're doing. You could also just say like I'm fine, how are you?
Yeah,
And they're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, but I'm lying. I'm like, I love that you say that because that is like such a innocent and endearing thing, but at
Yeah.
the same time, not not lying is
I mean,
actually
always hit him
making
with
it
the
more. more
could be
comfortable.
better, could be worse, kind
Yeah,
of.
yeah. So we went through various like responses they could give, but it was like their reasoning why they hated it and why they hate when people ask. It was even causing them to like not engage in conversations with some family members because they're going to ask how I'm doing and I don't want to answer. It's like,
Yeah,
hmm.
I
So
know.
I wanted to point that out because like if there are people in your life or if you're one of those people that really struggles with this concept, this could also be part of that reason.
Well,
Um,
yeah, and it's also like kind of what the show bringing up the show is a good idea too, because it's also like you you almost it almost proves that you almost have to wear masks, and it's not inauthentic. I think that's the point we're really trying to get. It's like I've often thought about it like this, Dave, and I'm really trying to kind of work this out with in terms of this and in terms of like unwanted intrusive thoughts, but like thinking about your brain as like a deck of cards that you get a hand, right? And some of these cards you have to decide like, is this a good time to play this card? Is this card
right.
useful? Is this card actionable here? Or do I need to tuck it away for later? But that doesn't mean I need to throw it away because we don't
Yes,
know what the next card's gonna be flipped and what would be useful card to play next, right? So it's like the in fact, it's more important to have a diversified identity than it is to have this sort of like I'm this model of who we are, right?
absolutely, absolutely. So I think on this topic, I feel like we could probably go on for a much longer time, but I don't want to like just I don't
Eat.
want to this to come off repetitive. I don't
Yeah,
want
yeah,
it to come off as like too much information or too many different like alternative thoughts about the subject. I would love to hear people's feedback though on it and to maybe be able to do a bonus episode based on processing some of the feedback, thoughts, questions, examples that people have. I think that'd be super
also,
like
I
fun.
coming down the pike, I have maybe Dave, we can like get together on Tuesday or Monday, because I had a day the other day
Mm-hmm.
on this past Thursday, another sort of dark day.
Yeah, yeah.
But the listeners tend to want to hear those kinds of things.
Greg,
The real life
they're
stuff.
trying to connect with us on a deeper level. And you encouraged me to, or I asked you about something that happened to me recently and like that I wanted to share. And you're like, why not talk about it? And I'm going to encourage the same thing to you. Like even like just the couple of like solo updates on life that I gave, and I have more I want to do. I get it now. Like I get why, and that's kind of what gave me the idea of doing this. Other than when we talk about it all the time at therapy, but it's also like we're having that experience with our listeners, and like our listeners have shared vulnerable information with us, and they want to hear more about our
I,
vulnerable information.
listen, you want to hear my shadow? I got some shadow.
So, Greg, you're gonna have to do it, man.
I got some shadow. And don't we all? Yeah, there's plenty of things that I'm doing. Um, insecurities for sure that,
Yeah.
um, create maladaptive responses. We're all works in progress. I think that's the idea. So, Dave, do you
So
have any
yeah, we at the start we didn't announce our newer members of Patreon. So I apologize for that, but we did have Kate just join, and she is part of the bonus episode tier. So we appreciate that and hope that you'll enjoy that bonus episode stuff as part of just our general tier membership. We also had Troy. Is it Troy Mickle or Mickey? Mickle. Sorry, I couldn't see my screen. Good. But Troy, thanks for joining, and I hope you enjoy the content that you get access to. And also Tori Martinez and Carrie Meadows. I don't remember if we said either of those last episode.
oh, welcome.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. And just another shout out I wanted to give. So our friend Joe, who
Mhm.
has been a longtime listener, shared with us that he passed his clinical license exam. So wanted to give a huge congrats to Joe. He's been in contact with us throughout the years, emailing us, and just really proud of him. And just
Yes. What a relief once you kind of like,
absolutely,
oh God, remember that? That is like a headache.
you
And
know,
it's a one-time shot. you know?
He did ask us about our thoughts about doing an episode on the clinical exam, and you know what, actually we had a Spotify listener ask, like, could you put together a playlist or something for people preparing for it. I think we should just do an episode maybe next week. That's what we should do, because there are
Well,
people are starting to take that test more, and we have a ton of grad school students.
we do. I just, being completely honest, how helpful do you think you could be? Because I mean,
100%. I feel like I could probably help them pass.
okay, shit.
I feel personally, all right, this is me tooting my own horn.
Yeah.
I had a piece of
Yeah.
advice
Okay.
that I felt was helpful to myself and to most of the people that I gave it to,
Okay.
if they could understand what my piece of advice was. I gave it to you and
Even
you've
you
passed.
did?
So
I did pass, yeah. So wait, I should be thanking you.
you're welcome. Um,
Yeah.
I just think there are things that we could talk about for an
Yeah, yeah,
episode,
yeah.
and it might be helpful. Maybe it won't be, but
Let's do that as a bonus, though.
so people are gonna have to join the bonus tier.
Well, boy, well, I'm sorry to.
All
What's that?
right, then I'm just going to share the one thing I will say
Share
for
the
people.
piece.
If for people who aren't part of the bonus tier, the one piece of advice I will always give people is take away all the experience you've had after grad school in person doing the work, and go back to grad school mind
Yeah,
and take that test as if you are still a student with zero experience, and answer each question based on what your professors would have taught you versus what you learned in real life.
that's good
Because
advice. Now I'll give my little piece.
yes,
Okay. So I have a tendency, if there's a question, to be like, well, this could go a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Like, say,
that's what I'm saying. I think that's what happens after you
oh,
get
okay, okay.
real life experience. You start
Yeah.
to understand there's way more answers to give, but
Yeah.
there is one answer that we would be given probably in grad school.
Yeah, that's true. So don't overthink it, I think is
Yeah,
the best advice too. Just what feel like that, don't think that the test is trying to trick you, because oftentimes tests will be trying to, the test is not trying to trick you. It's just like very baseline. Imagine like insurance company slash professor is giving you this exam, not what you would do clinically.
absolutely. And I think when you think about professors, you're going to think from like all the aspects that were really heavily drilled into us from our grad school. A lot of
Ethics.
cultural competency, scales were huge in mine, and that was my like weakness, was knowing the names of scales and what they were used for. I'm not really
Yeah.
good with that.
Still
i
don't.
I don't do a lot of that, I'm sorry, but that was something I did tell people, like, beyond just this piece of advice, learn about some of the scales, because they did ask about those, unfortunately.
You'll probably never use them unless someone is like you have like a real like hands-on patient who wants to do like there's like a Y box, there's like an OCD scale, there's
Right.
like inventories for depression, anxiety, and all these things that like kudos, Kuxos, and PHQ-9s and this and that and the other thing. But like we CHSRS, Stanley Brown Safety Plan, like so many things that um unless you're in like a I don't know, maybe like a community mental health setting where they're like forced to do these kinds of things with every patient, um, you're not really gonna be doing too much.
No. And it's funny because I am now supervising a lot of intern therapists at our
Yeah.
site, and a lot of them will ask me questions
Yep.
about things that I don't do because I'm not in grad school and I don't have a professor asking me to, like, so what scale are you going to utilize? It's like, it doesn't really. I'm not going to say that. Sure, it matters, but
Yeah.
in the work that
Well,
I do, it feels less needed.
it's like it's about simplifying, right? Like where is this person? Where
Yeah.
was this person? Where do they want to be? What's getting in the way? Let's get to work there. Um, there's your scale, pal.
Yeah. Actually, our just side note, um our work site, they're making us do the mood scale again.
1 through 9, 1 through
Yeah,
10.
like how rate your mood on a scale of 1 to 10. And I actually stopped doing that for a long period of time because a lot of my patients didn't like it. They would be like, "That's silly."
Yeah.
That's and
It's like sort of off topic in a way.
Yeah. Oh, it depends on the patient, but it really can be if it's not something they're there for. So a lot of patients would kind of roll their eyes, and it just got like to something I just felt I didn't need to ask. And then I got feedback again on my notes that I need to be asking that for our paperwork. What do you call it? Audits and stuff.
Okay, I guess I'll.
Also, if you are on our bonus tier, I did a little video of Greg and my
Oh,
office
oh my God.
space.
So I wanted to say something about that.
Did you watch it?
Yeah, my office, that's my part-time office. I have a 40-hour a week
Oh boy,
office
I'm sure
where
it looks so gorgeous,
and it's
Greg.
gorgeous. Okay, there is not a dead plant in that office at my work.
Is it decorated
It is decorated.
by you or someone else?
By me,
Okay.
by me, and so like I will do a little film.
Wait,
I'm
did you get in? Did you get a little like teed off that I had to show
no, no,
that plant?
no, God, no.
So
It was funny.
I,
I,
did you see the comment,
yeah, by uh,
Annalyn? Yeah.
Anna Lynn, I was gonna say,
And I was going to respond, but I was like, I'll just wait till the episode to say it because I actually heard you walk into the office one day and I heard you say, she guessed, Annalyn guessed that you probably say, like, oh, you probably reflect that dead plant to therapy somehow. I actually heard you do it one day because so Greg and my office are actually like side by side, and Greg, I can usually hear Greg because he has a loud voice. And sometimes like you're talking as you're walking into the room. So
yeah,
like
yeah,
you walk by my office. I heard you make a reflection about that plant and somehow like reflecting it on therapy. So she
yeah.
was totally right. You
Yeah,
do
she was on.
that.
She was on. Everything's intentional. It's like when Tony Soprano's like, I know this. What are you trying to do with this picture of this cabin or whatever? It's like not everything's intentional, but you can kind of make everything intentional.
Why haven't you gotten rid of that plant?
Dude, I feel bad throwing away a plant. I really do. Even
Yeah,
if
but
it's
it's I do if it still has some life on it.
yeah,
There's no life on that plant, Greg.
no, you never know.
There's not 1 ounce of life. No, I do know. There is not 1 ounce of
It's
life
dust.
in that.
It's dust. I know.
Its roots have whittled. Like
I
they
think it's
are.
because I think the winter really just yeah,
Oh,
it out.
yeah, it was the winter. It wasn't the lack
Tough
of
winter.
watering and putting it away from your window.
Tough, tough winter for that thing. Yeah. That could have been. Hey, we live and we learn. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
David, you have a lovely go Celtics for those who. David, you're a Celtics fan. I've seen you wear.
I'm a
Celtics.
diehard Celtics fan.
All right, so you're watching them tonight. Let's do it. All right. So, without further ado,
Have a great day.
have a great.
Bye, everyone.